President, we're almost now a month into the Democrats' DHS, Department of Homeland Security, shutdown. And Democrats have essentially walked away from trying to solve it.
What you're about to see here is a heated moment on the Senate floor as a Republican senator accuses Democrats of walking away from negotiations over funding the Department of Homeland Security. The dispute centers around immigration enforcement reforms and government funding during a politically sensitive election year. Listen closely to how the senator frames the shutdown and who he says is responsible. This exchange highlights just how tense the political battle over border policy has become in Washington.
That's right. After almost a month of forcing DHS employees to work without pay, Democrats have shown their true colors. They don't care about funding Homeland Security. They don't actually care about reforming immigration enforcement. That's also become very obvious. They're only interested in keeping this issue alive for an election that is 8 months away. Mr. President, this is the type of political game that the American people are sick of. I'm sick of it. I want to read for you something that was reported here by Bloomberg. This is a member of the Democrat leadership. The quote is, "We are very serene with what is going on." We are very serene with what is going on. Mr. President, we have a job to do. Part of that job is funding the federal government. That hasn't always been treated like a priority around here, but this year we made some real bipartisan progress on government funding. We made progress despite the fact that Democrats delayed things with a record-long 43-day government shutdown last fall. And we were on track this year to complete all 12 appropriations bills by the end of January, finishing the work for fiscal year 2026 and laying the groundwork to continue our progress in fiscal year 2027. Among those bills was a bipartisan agreement for a full-year Department of Homeland Security funding bill with reforms requested by the Democrats. It had money for more body cameras, de-escalation training, and additional oversight of immigration enforcement activities. But then Democrats reneged on that agreement.
And this is the turning point in the senator's argument. He's claiming that a bipartisan deal on DHS funding was already within reach, including reforms Democrats had previously requested. But according to his account, those negotiations collapsed when Democrats stepped away from the agreement. In highly polarized debates like this, each side often tells a very different story about what actually happened behind closed doors.
So, we went back to the negotiating table. Or I should say, when I say we, Mr. President, I mean we, the Republicans, at least, went back to the negotiating table. Since Democrats reneged on the DHS agreement, the White House has made two very serious offers for legislating additional reforms. The same cannot be said of the Democrats. And with their refusal to respond to the White House's second, and again, serious and substantial offer, Democrats have now essentially walked away from negotiations entirely. We've made repeated overtures to them to get them back to the negotiating table, but they're not interested in talking. Now, Mr. President, it might be understandable to walk away from a negotiation when there doesn't seem to be a prospect of coming to a resolution. But that isn't the case here. As I said, Republicans and the White House have demonstrated their willingness to negotiate and compromise. It's Democrats who are refusing to talk. So why would Democrats walk away from what could otherwise be a very productive negotiation? Not long ago, Democrats were telling us how urgent the need for reform was. Now they're apparently fine without reforms. Now, why would that be? Well, it could be the Democrats believe the actions the Trump administration has already taken on its own are enough to resolve the issues. Or it could be that Democrats were never really interested in implementing reforms in the first place. Actually, if Democrats cared about reforms, they'd be coming to the table to get a bill. Instead, they're playing politics. Mr. President, there was a time when Democrats, I remember very well, would lecture about the importance of funding the government and the dangers of government shutdowns. Well, those days are apparently long gone. Democrats now see government shutdowns as a handy tool to use anytime they don't get everything that they want. They don't care if they force people to work without pay indefinitely. They don't care if they put our national security and public safety in jeopardy. They only care about what's in it for them. Mr. President, as I said, the American people are tired of the games. Lines get longer at the airports because TSA isn't funded. American people want us to do our jobs. Republicans are at the table. We're ready to work toward a solution. Democrats have walked away. And they'll need to explain to the American people why they refuse to do their job and why they regard doing nothing as better than doing something. And Mr. President, maybe again it's because, in the words of one of the Democrat leaders, and I quote, "We are very serene with what is going on." We are very serene with what is going on, end quote. That captures it, Mr. President. I yield the floor and I suggest the absence of quorum.
Moments like this show how deeply divided Washington has become over immigration policy and government funding. On the Senate floor, accusations like these are often part of a much larger political battle playing out behind the scenes. But for viewers watching at home, the key question remains, who is really responsible when negotiations break down? What do you think about this exchange? Was the criticism justified or just another example of political blame shifting? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below.